If you believe in equality of opportunity, and you also believe that society is not equal and not everybody has the same opportunities, then you have an obligation to try and change society so that equality is actually achieved and people have at least something like equal opportunities. So that's what we're going to examine in this short video. I think it's a fundamental fact of just about every society, and especially the United States, that people have different situations. They have different amounts of money. They have different housing. They have different jobs. And all of those factors and others mean that they have different abilities to do well in their lives. There is a question about to what extent those differences are to do with how much effort people have made, and certainly various theories of justice say that if one person makes more effort than another, then they should be entitled to benefit from that effort and do better than somebody else. On the other hand, there is a strong idea that, at least starting out, the playing field should be equal, that people should be able to have equal opportunity compared to other people when they're starting out. And so when we're thinking about equality of opportunity, we're especially thinking about young people, children, and what kind of opportunities they are going to have in their lives. The worry is that in the United States, it's just not true that if you work hard enough, you can succeed and do very well. It seems that plenty of people work very hard and they just stay static, or indeed their lives can get worse. So the idea of equality of opportunity is aimed to guarantee the ideal that people should be able to benefit from the work that they do. It's an empirical claim to say that life in the United States is unequal. I think it's pretty obvious. The exact numbers can be researched, so I'm not going to be giving all sorts of empirical evidence for this. That would be a different project. The aim of this video is to mainly talk about the moral implications of these differences in situation. There's obviously various things to look at. One would be income. Different people have different incomes. Some people are rich, some people are poor, and there's people in the middle. So the point about equality of opportunity is that children, if you are born into a low-income family, they tend to have less opportunity to develop their lives. So it means that people from wealthy families have more opportunities than people from poor families. Another massive factor in the United States is race, and certainly there's been historical and systemic discrimination on the basis of race in the United States. There's plenty of debate about to what extent there is still racial discrimination and how to understand that. From the point of view here, you can just look at the actual wealth gap and there's a pretty significant wealth gap between white households and black or Hispanic households. I can give you a few numbers. Um, so the incomes of the top 1% of earners have grown significantly faster than the incomes of the bottom 90%. So basically, the super rich are getting rich faster. Most other people are not getting rich that fast. Um, the middle class, however we want to define that term, has been struggling more, and so there's a shrinking middle class with a widening gap between the rich and the rest. And income equality in the United States is at a historic high. So there's plenty of reason to think that there are very significant economic inequalities in the United States. You can also look at other aspects of life which indicate inequality. Education is definitely a major one. Some schools are better than others. And that means that kids who go to good schools will have more opportunities than kids who go to less good schools. And which area you live in and how much money you have can have a huge factor regarding the education that your kids get. Another factor which is worth mentioning is geographic inequality. It can be that living in one area will give you more opportunity than living in another. That can be because you live in a richer area, or it can be that there are simply just less opportunities around in some areas than others. One measure of how much inequality there is in a society and to what extent there is equal opportunity is what's known as intergenerational mobility. That's the likelihood of someone moving up in the economic ladder compared to their parents. And in the United States, that kind of mobility has decreased in recent years. I have a chart here giving an indication of how the United States measures up compared to other countries. And the United States apparently is doing better than Slovenia and Chile and Italy and the United Kingdom, but it's doing significantly worse than a bunch of other countries, including New Zealand and Sweden, Australia, Canada, Finland, Norway, and Denmark. So it seems it's possible to achieve greater intergenerational mobility, but the United States is not doing very well with that. So if there's a significant lack of equality of opportunity, then what should society do in order to create equality of opportunity? Well, there are obvious places to look, and here's a list. You can look at education, employment, housing, healthcare, criminal justice, social support, and the nature of systemic bias. So we're going to look at those areas. In education, it does a lot of good to invest in high quality early childhood education programs. That has a big payoff. It helps if you provide schools with equal funding. So rather than there being schools for rich people and schools for poor people, you have schools which give basically the same education to everyone. It can help to have a diverse set of teachers, because then students tend to do better with a diverse set of teachers, and there's a kind of more equality in how students learn. And it can help to have good support services for teaching, including things like counseling, tutoring, and mentorship programs. So those are all the things that could be invested in to create greater equality of opportunity. In terms of employment, it's useful to have laws governing employers, laws that focus on anti-discrimination, that insist on equal pay for equal work. It's helpful to have programs which provide access to training so that people can learn how to do jobs and get into careers. And it can help to have family-friendly policies so people with families are not put at a disadvantage. And obviously things like childcare are a huge issue, and paid parental leave makes a big difference. Housing is a big factor in terms of equality of opportunity. It helps to have affordable housing. That means that everybody is able to kind of have satisfactory housing. And so it can be helpful if a government works to make sure there is affordable housing. It also helps to enforce fair housing laws, so avoid discrimination both in house ownership and in rentals. And it can help to have community development so that disadvantaged neighborhoods are improved and you get more opportunities for people in those neighborhoods. A major factor regarding equality of opportunity is healthcare. If you have a lot of health issues, then it's going to be harder to do well in life and to do well in your job. And so if you want equality, then there should be equality of access to care. Everybody should have access to the same basic health care. Healthcare system should be working on achieving equality in terms of resources and interventions, and making sure that communities which are especially needy get their needs met. It can also help a lot to have preventative care, to have wellness programs available to everyone. In criminal justice, it's very useful to have sentencing reform. If you look at the state of criminal justice in the United States, there are massive racial disparities in incarceration rates. So how many people are actually locked up, and what races there are. There's massive inequalities there. So if you have sentencing reform, that can help to address those inequalities. It can help to have rehabilitation programs so that people who are getting out of incarceration are able to get back into the workforce. There tends to be massive discrimination against people who have previously been incarcerated. So it makes a big difference if you can actually get those people to be able to get jobs. And community policing will help in establishing trust between law enforcement and communities. So it can be helpful to have that kind of policing. So there's all sorts of things you can do to the criminal justice system so that it doesn't promote inequality, but rather it helps to reduce inequality. Finally, there's social support. If people are unemployed, if they need food, it helps to have a support system which will help them get through the hard times. It can be helpful to have mentorship programs, which help connect young people with role models, getting them guidance and support. And again, it can be helpful to have community centers which provide resources and opportunities for people to connect with each other and be good members of their communities. Finally, there's the issue of systemic bias. There's plenty of evidence that there is systemic bias against various populations in the United States, especially on the basis of race, also gender. So it's important to address issues of systemic bias. And that in order to do that, you need to kind of first examine it and find out what kinds of bias and inequality there are in societies. That means in collecting data. You need to engage in policy reform so that systemic bias is targeted and eliminated. It's important to achieve diversity in various forms of institution in terms of education, employment, and that means focusing on inclusion. And it's going to be very important to engage in training people about implicit bias and having a society which is welcoming to all cultures. And so generally it's going to be important to have a large focus on methods which will reduce systemic bias. And that's it for now. I hope that's been instructive.